Also, as mentioned in the last video, I have made a start with getting the electricals rolling. So, to explain here what's going on, fitting through-hole valves, more good epoxy painting. I'm just going to say it, this is a fail moment. Okay, so having slept on all those thoughts that I was explaining in the prior clips of video, waking up this morning and doing a bit more thinking about things, I have arrived at a couple of directions really. The first is going to be that I really do need to have the wiring, the electrical wiring sorted before I start putting lining up, for obvious reasons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start marking out in the boat where all of the different light fittings and items that are going to need power will be, so that I can, number one, purchase the tinned wire and lay that wiring, and then number two, actually start putting the lining in to cover up those spaces. I actually drew up a boat plan with all of the different things that I'm going to require. The system is only going to be 12 volt. I don't have any interest in having a parallel 240 volt system or higher voltage system that I can plug into shore power. I'm just not interested in that. I understand a lot of people will feel strongly about disagreeing with that, but after all, it's my boat, and I think that a good example to think about when it comes to running a 12 volt only system is your car, for example. In a car, they run on 12 volt system only. Well, unless you have an electric car, of course, that you plug into mains power to charge. But point being, your motor car, your automobile, runs on 12 volts only. If it's hot when you're driving along, you turn the air conditioner on. The sun sets, you need lights, you turn the lights on. The nights get cool, you turn the heaters on. You feel like some entertainment, on goes the music. Really, I think there's a lot of similes with a boat. Once you're offshore, or even in an anchorage in an urban area, you're not plugged into mains power, and you do everything with your boat that you want to. You run all the things you need to eat, to use the toilet, to keep warm, to keep cool, etc., etc. So that's a little explanation that I will be having a 12 volt system only, and I am happy with that decision. This is probably maybe 12 months ago that I put all this together. I also put together a table that shows, again, all of the things that I will require and just some details about those things. I concede up front that of all of the things that I grew up learning a bit about, and really I'm an amateur in everything, I'm not an expert in any, I never got my head around electronics, and I confess that up front. So this has been already a beginning learning curve for me as of about probably 18 months ago, when the first thing I did was read the 12 volt Bible. So that was really the beginning of my learning about 12 volt electronic systems, and at a very basic level electronics. I do have a lot to learn yet. As I said, I have all of the things that I think that I'm going to need listed. I will put some extra wiring in the boat for the in case down the track instances where things might pop up, but I'm going to be doing things properly. I'll be taking my time, I'll be consulting with people and making sure I get this right. And also my plan is that once I've done the best that I think I can with running the wiring and setting things up, I am actually going to get a marine electronics professional to visit the boat as a consultant, to just go through, make sure I've got everything right. For obvious reasons, when you don't have the experience in electronics, I think you really want to make sure that they're right. I place a high emphasis on having a professional cast their eye over and go through things and make sure that what I'm doing is actually correct. The other thing is, once I've got the wiring laid to all of the devices that I'm going to be needing, and then I'll be able to start putting the lining in. Before the actual lining can go in, I need to have a whole lot of battens fixed to the steel framing. The holes are pre-drilled in the framing for all of that. Thank goodness I did all of that after I had actually done the main build. So that gives me a few jobs ahead over the next few weeks, maybe longer, whereby I can rip that timber down, I can have the wiring laid where it needs to throughout the boat, and then I can start cutting up the plywood lining that will go against the hull and side decks in order to finish off the lining for the boat. There's going to be two main thicknesses of the marine ply for the lining. One will be 9mm, the other will be 12mm. Where I'm going to be having cabinetry that I will be wanting to use the lining to fit the cabinetry to, I'm going to use 12mm. Where it's just going to be lining and no cabinetry, I will use the 9mm. Also, to make mention, on the coach roof, there won't be plywood lining. I'm actually going to have what I think is a very, very nice look, which is tongue and groove Western red cedar panelling, and that will be painted white, but it leaves that nice little groove in all of the panelling, which for me has a nautical look to it, and I like it. So there'll be a range of different types of lining going in to close up all of the hull and decks and coach roof. So now it will be on to figuring out more of this electronic work and marking where all the fittings will be so that I can then work out how much wiring I will need and then purchase a roll or two of the tinned copper wiring. Also, as mentioned in the last video, I have made a start with getting the electricals rolling. So I went to my local marine chandlery and I was able to get a number of things. This bag has deck LED lights. Another bag here has electrical cable. I've got 2, 4 and 6mm twin tinned wire. So I have a range of LED lights, and I've also got these rapid chargers which enable charging at a much more rapid speed. So I'm actually going to get some rosewood down to the saw, the table saw today, and just start ripping up lengths of that. It will be epoxy painted. Now that I have all the bulkheads in and certainly all the painting done, I'm actually going to be able to put the ball valves in. I'll show you what that looks like. So these are the remaining ball valves. They're all 316 stainless steel, as you can see there. The skin fittings, which obviously are all fitted, the likes of this one, and the galley one on the other side. I have some others that will have a ball valve also, and there are 2 others aft there, but it's a little dark to see. My wiring cabling tube arrived, so I'm going to be able to start running that. So back to some table saw work, which I'm looking forward to. A little supply here of some New Guinea rosewood, and as I said, I'll just strip that up. I don't need to be too fussy with it. I mean, it needs to be decent and smooth enough to get a good couple of coats of epoxy on, but I don't need to be too fussy about the finish. With my new little trimmer, I'll be able to just knock those sharp corners off so that I can get a nice couple of layers of epoxy coat on all of those corners. So what I've done here is turned that rosewood into these battens. They're 23 millimeters by 23 millimeters, and I'll drill holes through these and bolt them to the frames. So that hardwood bolted to the frames with some fix 15 will make that very, very secure. You know, they're very, very stiff. You don't get much flex out of them. It's such a great timber. I really, really love it. So, to explain here what's going on, I have all the batten timber here, and what I did yesterday was I made up this jig for my little trimmer here, and what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to run all these bits of timber past that tool cutter, meaning that I won't have to have the tool in my hand and try to run it along the edge of the timber, because this timber is very, very narrow. I'm not going to be able to clamp it and run the tool along it at the same time. So yeah, I just decided much better to make up a jig to house this that's very solid in there. Then I can just run all of these lengths along there with two hands on it very, very easily. So I think that's going to speed up the process immensely. So that's that done. That's worked out very nice actually. It makes quite a bit of work very quick and easy. That's great now. Those sharp edges are off, and it means that I can epoxy paint it to protect it and no sharp corners. Can you imagine hand sanding all of that? Or, as I say, even having the trimmer in your hand trying to hang on to this, and you know, you'd have to do one end and turn it around and do the other end. So that jig's definitely paid for itself already. Not that it really cost anything, just a bit of time. The good thing too is, just to mention, this bit having the roller on it, the ball bearing roller, means that you just push the piece up against it. You can't go any further than the bearing, which means, you know, wherever you are, whatever angle, it's just very user friendly having those ball bearing surfaces. I'll probably just do a very light sand. They're pretty good. I mean, they're not dressed. I've just rough cut them. They're not dressed, but they're not going to be seen. Their job is one that's hidden, and it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm happy with them. So these through hull valves that go onto the skin fittings, you can see the brand there, and as I showed before, they are 316 grade stainless steel. The process will be just going to use the wire brush, give the threads a good clean up. They were taped up for all of the work on the inside, including the painting, and then a clean with some acetone. And then I'll be using this here, which is called Stag jointing compound. It's an old product. I actually did a bit of online searching yesterday, and it actually still comes fairly highly recommended for metal threads when it comes to wanting sealing it is still fairly highly recommended. I'm sure there's a lot of different products out there, more modern, and also there's Teflon tapes, so I'm going to use it. I have it. Also, it has a long history of doing the job, so as I say, I have it, I'm going to use it. Once the thread is all cleaned up and the compound is on there, I will obviously need to just screw and fit the valve.
Balancing on a weary line, too scared to trust you and jump down. I'll keep my status quo up here, won't let anybody come near. I'll fix it on my own. 29 years I've been the same, trying so hard to run from shame. Can I keep up the pace? To fool myself, I don't need grace.
As you saw, it didn't quite fit. I just needed to take out a little bit of that bulkhead with the Dremel tool, and I'll sand that all smooth and repaint that later. A little dark in here today, bit of a grey, showery day. So what I'm doing here, I've just had a trial with the orbital sander and it comes up well. I probably should have routed that little edge after I sanded, but it is still rounded, so that's enough. And as you'll see, I'm going over it fairly quickly. That's smooth. It's probably a bit hard to see on camera, but it has come up nice and smooth. The other thing I did was I wrote the measurements on the end. I don't know whether you can see that. I've transferred all the measurements that I had written on the side onto the ends because that all corresponds with where they go in the boat. Quick sand and then they can be painted.
Will you be there to catch my fall? Will you be sure you'll hear my call?
So let's see how these fit. I actually took off those measurements quite some time ago and I was sort of hoping that I'd still understand my scribblings. Well, that is spot on, as is that. I'll just clamp those. So that looks really good. I'm very happy with that. The fit is good. That's another good step in the process. Okay, well, I'm just making a start at this wiring. If you've been watching any prior videos, you would have seen this wiring loop tubing running along the length of the boat that disappears up forward there. And what I had done when I first put the windlass wiring cable inside of that tubing was I ran a string with that heavy gauge wiring for the windlass. I've actually connected a really heavy gauge fishing line to the end of that string, drawn that through this tubing. That went okay. I don't think the 6mm wiring is going to be easy though. I think that's going to be trouble. So this was the small gauge line that I had run through, and I've replaced that with this heavy gauge 100-pound fishing line. It's a pretty thick line there, as you can probably see, and at 100 pound I should be able to pull on that. The next thing I did was I drew through enough for that line to be connected to itself. So now I have a big loop of line, heavy gauge line, and I'm going to tie the 6mm twin core wire cable to that and everything crossed that comes through without too many profanities and sweat. Let's see how that goes. And because of the length of that cable, I've had to string this end up down that end of the boat so that I can have it straight Obviously you can't drag it through if it's in a bend, so I've strung that up, as you can probably see there. So that's forming a relatively straight run. So from there, alongside of the heads, through the Soleil, and then through the V-berth to the end. So here's the idea. Tube comes back here. I've got this being held by a line back up there. Double, or probably more than double, lashed the cable wire, taped over that. It just needs to dive down there all the way. Now, as you can see, theoretically there's enough space for this wiring to go down, but I anticipate troubles. So, going to be difficult to film. Let's see how it goes as a start though. Well, everybody, I'm just going to say it. This is a fail moment. It has the windlass heavy gauge wire inside, and I'm trying to draw the other wiring through to feed power to other parts of the boat, and it is not going to work. I can say that my idea of having this flexible ribbed tubing is just a fail. Because of the ribbing, every centimetre that you drag or you try to drag the cable through, it just catches on that ribbing. There's nothing smooth about it. It's really not designed, I believe, to draw cable through. So after yesterday's efforts of trying to do that, and I'll show you what it looks like, on thinking in the evening, I came up with a plan B, which I think is the right way around, and I should have done it that way in the first place. Never mind, live and learn, right? That's the 6mm wire that I'm trying to feed down, and I've really only got less than a metre down this tube. In short, it's a failure. It's a failure! So the plan B is 2 of these lengths of conduit. Another one is in place, ready to go in. So, join me in next week's episode, everybody, where I definitely get a proper solution for running that electrical cable. Please like, subscribe, hit that bell and share. I'd really appreciate that.